Hello everyone, and welcome to the 198th episode of Analyzing Evil, featuring Chucky from the Child's Play franchise. It's October, so that means it's time for a whole host of horror-themed villains to get their time to shine in this series, and we have a great one for you in this episode, Charles Lee Ray, otherwise known as Chucky. Chucky has become one of the most iconic slasher villains ever created, and while he isn't as complex or intricate as some villains out there, as with Child's Play, we're given a heap of horror-filled fun that has stood the test of time to become one of the most beloved aspects of the horror film genre. And I'll be interested to see what you all think of my assessment of Chucky, so please don't hesitate to let me know down below. Now, Chucky is one of the scariest inanimate objects ever animated, but you know what else is scary? Carrying around an overburdened, time-worn, and posture-destroying old-school wallet for years at a time. And if you want to finally upgrade your wallet to the 21st century, I recommend you check out our sponsor for this video, Exter. Over 3 years ago now, I talked about Exter in my Max Cady video, and I've been using the wallet they sent me ever since, and for suffering quite a few drops over that time period, it's held up surprisingly well. But in those 3 years, Exter has been hard at work improving on this excellent design, and I'm excited to share with you the upgraded Cardholder Pro they've sent me. Featuring the same sleek and slim design, their new upgraded card holder includes a revamped metal ejector trigger for more durability and a more comfortable and ergonomic design. And with the many add-ons that Exter offers, like the cash clip backplate that you're seeing here, you're given even more storage capacity than you had with their previous design. But the benefits don't just stop there, as not only is the Exter Cardholder Pro environmentally friendly with its 100% recycled space-grade aluminum design, but it strives to keep your information and finances safe and secure, as it blocks RFID to prevent wireless theft. And with Exter's covert tracker cards, you can pair your wallet with your phone, so you never have to worry about where your wallet is and who has it if you ever lose it. Exter is a great choice for anyone, and with the holidays approaching, it makes for an excellent gift as well. But you don't have to wait for the holidays to find great deals on Exter's products, as they run fantastic sales year-round. And with their current sale, you can enjoy an even greater discount by clicking the link down in the description. And when you get there, be sure you enter my discount code VIOLET at checkout. That's the discount code VIOLET at checkout to receive even more bang for your buck when purchasing one of the best products out there to protect those bucks. Thank you, Exter, for sponsoring this video. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Charles Lee Ray, otherwise known as Chucky, has always been a bit. Born on May 1, 1958 in Hackensack, New Jersey, Charles, from what limited information we're given about his early life, seems to have had a fairly average, middle-class American childhood. He grew up in a nice house with 2 parents who loved him, which, as many of you will know, is quite the rarity for a person who ends up becoming a serial killer. In Charles' case though, the catalyst for his transformation into a killer wasn't some form of trauma, but an unusual fixation that went unchecked. On Halloween night in 1965, we see that Charles received an apple with a razor blade in it while he was out trick-or-treating. After inspecting it and cutting his finger, Charles, fascinated by the blood coming out of his cut, decides to take a bite of the apple right where the razor is. And though this must have caused him considerable pain, his only response is to give us a bloody smile. During what we can assume to be May of 1966, on Charles' birthday, we then find Charles violently smashing a piñata before we see him joyfully plunging a knife into his birthday cake. His choice to bite into the apple indicates to us that Charles had masochistic tendencies from a young age, but when you consider that later in life, he isn't so fond of being hurt, I would say it's erroneous to claim that he was ever a masochist. What is apparent though, is that Charles has likely always had a fixation with violence, and unfortunately for his mother, and many other people he'd encounter later in life, he was never given the opportunity to control these tendencies. Some killers are made, but the best of us are born. This is something that Chucky says at the end of Season 1, Episode 3 of his show, but that seems to be an erroneous statement as well, as Chucky says this after he's done reminiscing on the event that made him into a killer, the appearance of another serial killer at his family home, and the inspiration he was given from him to murder his mother. Either the night of his birthday, or shortly after it, a serial killer that was roaming the area happened upon the Ray family home, and after finding her husband dead in their hallway, and her son witnessing his father's murder, Charles' mother grabbed her son and quickly hid in their closet. But with a fresh example of what one can do with a knife, Charles turned his own onto his mother, afterwards being given an attaboy by his new mentor once he found Charles bloody and jubilant in that closet. Now, while Charles was either born with or developed an unusual fixation with violence, it's entirely possible that he wouldn't have become a killer had this man not paid a visit to his home, as there are millions of people who do have violent tendencies and don't become killers. And if this hadn't happened, perhaps his parents could have done a great deal to help their son curb his desire for violence. That being said, it could be that Charles was always destined to become a killer after being exposed to some other form of violence, whether that be through media or something else he witnessed in person. So who knows? Regardless, the fact remains that Charles was set upon the path of a killer from an age younger than most, and it would define him for the rest of his life, and then some. There might have been a chance still that Charles could have somehow overcome his compulsions through therapy, but that quickly became an impossibility when he was placed under the care of Dr. Mixter following his parents' death, a crazed woman who delighted in tormenting her patients and who believed Charles' fascination with violence was a rare gift that made him a genius, and she subsequently promoted this behavior within him rather than attempting to help him stifle it. Fast forward to 1972, and we find Charles living at the Burlington County Home for Wayward Boys in South Jersey, and though he was described as being a model resident for months, he quickly started showing signs of antisocial behavior, and were given quite the abhorrent example of this behavior. As a teenager living amongst younger boys, Charles had become an authority figure in these boys' lives, and as the cool older boy of the group, they hung on to his every word and followed him wherever he went. One day, Charles upset the home's janitor when he stepped on a floor he was mopping, which caused this man to then mop Charles' only pair of shoes with his dirty mop, which was enough of an insult against him to cause Charles to desire this man's death, which soon came to pass when he murdered him and dumped his body in the woods. A few days later, Charles is playing pretend with his group of friends, taking them on an adventure through the woods as Peter Pan leading his lost boys to find and defeat Captain Hook, and after a considerable trek, they find their target, the slain janitor, covered in maggots, with a hook sticking out of the stump where his left hand used to be. Two of the boys become frightened and immediately flee, but one, Eddie Caputo, stays and admires Charles' work. And later that night, when the police come to inquire about this missing janitor, Charles chooses to leave the home, but not before he gifts Eddie with the janitor's hand. And just as Charles was transformed into a killer by the appearance of another, Eddie Caputo would be too, as later in life, he would become Chucky's accomplice. We next meet Charles in 1986 in a nightclub back in Hackensack, New Jersey, and here is where he meets a woman named Delilah and an unnamed redhead who we later learn is none other than Tiffany Valentine. After taking both of these women back to a hotel room, Charles and Tiffany proceed to murder Delilah, with Tiffany telling him here that he should go by Chucky, birthing a nickname that would strike terror into dozens of people over the course of nearly 4 decades, whilst beginning a love affair that would transcend even the mortal realm. At some point, Chucky murdered Tiffany's mother, and the two would then go on to murder an elderly man who was selling them a car a year later, before they moved to Chicago. And after murdering someone without Tiffany one night, Chucky left their apartment after an argument. Angered, Tiffany chose to contact Detective Mike Norris and tip him off about Chucky's whereabouts. But sometime after he left their apartment, Chucky went to pay a visit to a certain family, a family who believed him to be just another average citizen, and their friend, the Pierce family. In between committing murders with Tiffany and Eddie Caputo, Chucky befriended this family and fell in love with their matriarch, Sarah Pierce. Desiring to take her and her family for his own, he murdered her husband and then kidnapped Sarah, believing that he was just going to step into their lives and fill the now missing role of husband and father to this family. But shortly after he did so, the police honed in on his location owing to Tiffany's tip, and Chucky was forced to flee, with Eddie joining him on the run, which then led to him getting shot in a toy store and transferring his soul into a good guy doll via voodoo, which he had made a hobby of in recent years. Now, while the voodoo aspect of this story is important, because it's what allows Chucky to continue inhabiting different hosts over the years, I'm not really going to go too in-depth into the particulars of it, as it's more so a device that enabled the creators to tell this story the way it's been told, than it is an important aspect of the evil of Chucky, not to mention that it's created a considerable amount of plot holes over the years. But there are a few things we should note about Damballa and his relationship to Chucky. Damballa, who is one of the most important spirits in the voodoo religion, is considered to be the Sky Father, and he's either the creator of all life, or the first thing created by Bon Dieu, which is the creator god in the voodoo religion. And from what I've seen, he's never been described as being a malevolent entity, but he is one in the Child's Play universe, and the most important role that Damballa plays in this story is being Chucky's supernatural benefactor. In the 3rd season of the Chucky show, we learn that Damballa is displeased with Chucky because he cheated on him with other gods, and because he hasn't been committing his crimes, which have all been done in Damballa's name, with any creativity, which reinforces the importance of Damballa's influence in Chucky's life, but not so much in forming his signature brand of evil. As expansive as the Child's Play franchise has become, and as many entries as there are in it, it's actually fairly simple to deconstruct the villainy of Charles Lee Ray, which I believe is a good thing. As we've already discussed, he's essentially been bad from the beginning, and over time, he develops into a cruel, callous, foul-mouthed, misogynistic, sadistic, and entirely merciless man who kills people simply for the sake of it. The only time we find Chucky having any sort of motivation for murdering people outside of doing so for fun is when he murders Sarah Pierce's husband so he can be with her, and when he kills people on his journey to reobtain a human body. The most complexity we get out of Chucky is in the TV show, but even there, the complexity is only expanded to his efforts to corrupt the youth, the revelation that he has another accomplice in Dr. Mixter, that he and Tiffany are planning to spread his influence even more than they did in the cult of Chucky, and the idea that he needs to appease Damballa with more creative kills to keep the power he granted him. But otherwise, Chucky's motivations remain the same throughout each entry in this series. Try and gain a human body back so he can keep living his life to the fullest and killing as many people as he wants, and to kill as many people as he can or needs to along the way. And Chucky, with the conclusion of the series showing us that he's still alive and well, despite the many attempts to keep him dead, always gets away with it or comes back regardless when he doesn't. In essence, the evil of Chucky, Charles Lee Ray, is centered around the idea that someone can just be evil for the fun of it, that all the murderous things they do are ultimately pointed towards keeping the game going for as long as they can. And you know what? You're free to tell me I'm wrong down below, but I don't think it needs to be, or should be, any more complicated than that. Yes, we've been given a bit more insight into how Charles became the killer he is, and while that's been great in helping us understand why someone might turn into such a psychotic and sadistic murderer like Chucky, when it comes down to it, does any of that really matter? Are the plot holes, and the voodoo, the scant amount of backstory, and the questionable storytelling devices we're exposed to what we should be focusing on? Or is Chucky meant to be a character that's just a bit of good old-fashioned horror-filled fun? I don't know about you, but I didn't hone in on the greater mysteries of Chucky when watching any of the entries in this series. Well, I mean I did recently, because that's sort of what I'm supposed to do to make these videos. But otherwise, I was more so focused on what Chucky was doing and what he was saying, and I didn't find myself really caring all too much about how or why he was able to continue doing what he does, or why he is who he is. What brutally hilarious line is Chucky going to belt out next? Is his next kill going to be as creative and gruesome as his last one? When and where is he going to strike? And is he going to stay dead this time? Or is he going to pop up 3 more times horrifically scarred and more maniacal than before he goes off to rest on the other side for a while? Chucky, a murderous doll that evokes that uncanny valley fear we've all felt when coming across certain dolls, is a perfect, or perhaps the most perfect example of an aspect of the horror genre that's been put to the wayside over the years as the big-name horror projects have gotten more intricate and detailed. That sometimes what you want to see when you load up a scary movie is a psychotic killer causing terror and running rampant for no other reason than he's a psychotic killer who loves causing terror and running rampant. Defenestration, strangulation, vivisection, enucleation. If there's a way to kill a person, Chucky has done it, and he's always done so in such a delightfully horrifying way. And over the course of this series, he's managed to do so for a grand total of 172 times. Serial killers are terrifying, and they and their stories offer us a glimpse into just how deep the chasm of evil can truly be. But is the Child's Play franchise about a serial killer, or is it about an insane murderous doll who delights and sickens us with his sinister antics? Maybe you can go in depth into Chucky's kills, motivations, and character. Or maybe all you need to know about Chucky to understand what he's about and enjoy this franchise to the fullest is to keep in mind something that's only relegated to fantasy, and that horror stories like these try to impart upon us. Evil can be fun, and well, Chucky just wants to play. Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Analyzing Evil, and I hope you've enjoyed. What are your thoughts on Chucky? Let me know down below, and leave a suggestion for a villain you'd like to see featured while you're at it. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. A big thank you to my subscribers, my patrons, my members, and anyone who's decided to honor me with a super thank, and a most vile thank you to those whose names you're seeing on screen now. Join the channel's Discord server and subreddit to interact with myself and the community, and follow me on the social media platforms listed below to keep up with the channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you soon.